Jordan left the care of our beloved cat, Lucy, to me while I was suffering from morning sickness. After a safe delivery, I was enjoying happy days, but then living together with my in-laws was proposed. Considering the limited time left with my mother-in-law, I agreed to live together, but the daily stress gradually built up. This life with my in-laws slowly started to drive me insane. My name is Rebecca Perez. I met Jordan when I was handling my first major project as a young designer. His company commissioned me to design a new business logo, and we had several meetings about it. The conference room at the large corporation was so refined and spacious that it took my breath away. I was impressed by the clear explanations given by the employees describing the business details. During breaks, their high communication skills and the warm atmosphere were quite evident. In such an environment, I was desperately taking notes while receiving information from a senior, trying to grasp the main points of the work. After the long meeting, I was so relieved that I couldn't help but sigh. Quite a lot of tension for the first day, don't you think? We need to relax more and enjoy the process. My progress was thanks to Senior Nikki choosing me as her assistant. I aim to use this opportunity to design a corporate logo by myself. After the meeting, I didn't go straight home but went to a nearby pub with Nikki. It had been a while since Nikki and I could align our schedules for a meal together. "You're working hard, and at this rate you might find a new boyfriend," Nikki said in a relaxed mode, deepening the conversation about my love life. "Not at all. I haven't had any good encounters," I replied, enjoying a beer after work. Nikki's interest in my love life stems from my history of failed relationships. She is the only person who knows about my past partners, and our relationship is very close. She wishes me happiness but seems to enjoy the episodes of my failed relationships. In the past, I had a boyfriend during high school who reported everything to his mother. He went to another school, so I used to only go on dates with him a few times a month. I have also witnessed him frequently exchanging messages during our dates. When I asked him, "Who are you messaging?" he replied, "I'm telling my mom what we're eating right now." I felt a bit uncomfortable with the situation and thought to myself, it would be troublesome if our dinner turned out to be the same. His comments continued. "My mom chose my outfit today. I've seen this movie with my mom, and I promised to eat this chocolate sundae with my mom." It was always about his mom. I was shocked to discover later on that his phone's wallpaper was a picture of his mom. I realized it was impossible for me to surpass his mom, and I ended our relationship. The guy I dated in college used my part-time job earnings at the casino and was dishonest. The person I dated right after getting a job turned out to be married, unexpectedly. I cut off the relationship immediately, but I still feel terrified at the thought of him possibly demanding alimony. Every time I hear it, it's good for a laugh. Nikki laughed, always looking forward to these stories. I've told this story many times, but thanks to Nikki laughing at it, I've come to accept it as a good memory. Just as we were about to move to the next bar, Nikki's phone rang. Her husband was feeling unwell and asked her to come home immediately. It's a pity. I thought we could drink leisurely since tomorrow is a day off. But there's nothing to be done if he's unwell, so go home and take care of him. Although I was quite drunk, I couldn't stop Nikki. She apologized, left money for the drinks on the table, and hurried home. Watching her rush home, I thought, it must be nice to go back to a home where your family is waiting, and I began to feel like getting married. I didn't feel like drinking alone that night, so I decided to go home too. While waiting on the train platform, someone spoke to me from behind. "Good work today," the voice said, and I immediately started thinking about work. There stood a tall man with black hair and glasses. "Good evening, I replied, not recognizing who he was. He continued the conversation. "Thank you for today's meeting. My name is Jordan Perez." At that moment, I remembered that there was someone else with the same last name. I was so focused on the meeting that I hadn't really looked at his face properly. "I apologize. Thank you for today," I said to him, expressing my gratitude, and then fell silent. Thanks to Jordan sharing many interesting stories, waiting for the train felt enjoyable. Jordan is 5 years older than me and lives alone. He doesn't have a girlfriend but showers his cat with a lot of love. I also love cats, and we had a lively conversation about that topic. When the train arrived, we said our goodbyes, and I felt a desire to continue our conversation. That night, as I lay in bed, I hoped to talk to Jordan again. After several work meetings, Jordan and I completed the logo design deal without having time for personal conversations. However, a few days later, I received an email from Jordan through the company mail, surprisingly including his personal number. Despite my hesitation, I couldn't suppress my strong desire to get closer to him, and as soon as I got home, I called him. "I apologize for calling you all of a sudden. I really enjoyed our conversation," I told him. Jordan explained that he had tried to give me his contact information several times before but couldn't find the right moment, and finally mustered the courage to contact me from the address written on my business card. Later, Jordan invited me on a date to a cat cafe, to which I happily agreed. On the day of the date, I was mesmerized by Jordan's casual attire. He was dressed in branded clothes from head to toe, but he wore them in a way that didn't feel off-putting. "Thanks for coming today," he said with a smile, and I realized that I was falling in love with Jordan, feeling my heart race. He had wanted to go to a cat cafe for a long time, but felt awkward going alone. We had a fun time surrounded by adorable cats. On the way home that day, Jordan proposed that we start dating with marriage in mind. I was surprised, but driven by my strong feelings for him and a longing for a relationship, I immediately agreed. He hugged me, filled with joy. I thought getting married wouldn't be bad if our feelings matched, although I hadn't been focusing on marriage-minded dating. As we went on more dates, my feelings for Jordan deepened. My personal fulfillment positively impacted my work, leading to an increase in design responsibilities. I quickly reported my new relationship to Nikki, and she supported me enthusiastically. 6 months after we started dating, Jordan and I officially got married. He was serious about marriage, which brought stability and smoothness to my life. Following his lead, we ultimately decided to tie the knot. After registering our marriage, Jordan, I, and his beloved cat, Lucy, started our life together. The initial period of our marriage was particularly trouble-free, and I felt happy. As time passed and I turned 27, I became pregnant and suffered from severe morning sickness. The stress of commuting increased, so I switched to working from home. This was possible thanks to the supportive environment at my workplace. However, the smell of Lucy's litter became a problem. Before my pregnancy, the cat's litter box odor hadn't bothered me, but it exacerbated my morning sickness. I tried wearing a mask and cleaning it frequently, but these actions only made me feel worse. Eventually, the smell of the cat itself became unbearable, and I could no longer hold her. One night, after returning from a drinking party, Jordan yelled in anger, "What's going on? Lucy's litter box is so dirty." That day, I had been feeling particularly unwell and had been bedridden all day. Despite having informed him of my condition, He had prioritized going out with friends. Therefore, I couldn't understand his anger. "I'm sorry, but I told you I wasn't feeling well, right?" I replied, apologizing yet feeling unjustified. Jordan's anger became more apparent. "What are you talking about? Your condition and not taking care of Lucy are unrelated." While he scolded me, he gently embraced Lucy. I indeed used my poor health as an excuse to not have to clean Lucy's litter box, but I had previously mentioned that her smell was becoming unbearable for me. Despite this, Jordan once again asked me to clean it. Since I was at home, I accepted the request. However, is that really a task I should be doing while feeling unwell? Normally, I wouldn't clean it all day while I was away at work, so this shouldn't be an issue. Thinking about it, I felt a surge of anger at why I should be blamed. I'm protecting our baby right now. I'm feeling sick from morning sickness, so I can't take care of Lucy. You know the smell of Lucy is tough for me, right? If cleaning is needed, why don't you have her stay at your parents' home until my morning sickness subsides? I blurted that out. By the time I realized it, it was too late. Jordan took Lucy and left with a terrifying expression. I immediately tried to apologize, but he responded, "I can't be with someone who doesn't love Lucy. I'll return when I've calmed down." So I've been just waiting for his return. However, weeks passed and Jordan never came back home. But one day, Jordan suddenly returned home alone. It seems that his parents had been taking care of Lucy. After hearing his mother's words, "How long do you intend to stay here?" Jordan showed remorse, apologized to me, and I admitted that I had gone too far, and we reconciled. This was our first major fight as a couple. Afterward, I safely gave birth to our daughter, Charlotte. Months later, Lucy came back home too, and by that time, I no longer noticed the smell. Parenting makes time fly, and Charlotte has already become a fashionable 5-year-old girl. I returned to work from home and was struggling with balancing work and parenting, but I was living a satisfying life. Since resolving the issue with Lucy, Jordan and I haven't had any major fights and have been living cooperatively. Then, suddenly, an event occurred. My mother-in-law fell seriously ill and, with only a short time left, wished to live with us. I have had little to no relationship with my in-laws, only seeing them during the New Year's celebrations, so the proposal to live together left me perplexed. Since Charlotte was born, visits from my in-laws have been sparse, and our relationship has been quite thin. However, for me, that level of distance was appropriate. Therefore, I proposed moving to an apartment near my in-laws' home. Since daily meal preparations are needed, bringing them over is tedious, and a large house has plenty of rooms, so it would expand our living space. Jordan argues that living together is economically advantageous since he would pay the rent and utilities. We, as a couple, are financially independent, with him taking care of the rent and utility bills. We save a fixed amount each month, and the rest is managed freely by each of us. Therefore, cost is not an issue for me. Despite feeling that living with others is difficult, it seems he does not understand my feelings. Charlotte is happy with the spacious house. I agreed to live with my in-laws on the condition that we would end the arrangement when my mother-in-law either recovers or passes away. Thus, we moved to my in-laws' house when our daughter started elementary school. My mother-in-law's illness was severe, and she couldn't stand for long periods, but she was able to manage her bathroom and bathing needs independently, so the need for care was less than expected. My duties remained the same as before, only with increased laundry and cooking, which I did not find difficult. My mother-in-law checks Charlotte's homework when she returns home and seems too well to pass away soon. The problems were with my father-in-law and Jordan. My father-in-law would casually give commands, expecting me to understand and act immediately, which of course was not always possible. Witnessing this, Jordan began to take advantage of me more and more. Situations such as the following started to occur. Considering my mother-in-law's health, I always made lightly seasoned meals. However, my father-in-law seemed dissatisfied with the seasoning. At mealtimes, he would point at the mean and demand salt or pepper. After complying a few times, I could no longer bear it and started leaving condiments on the table from the beginning, urging him to help himself. My father-in-law was satisfied with this arrangement, but Jordan kept requesting, "Make our food more flavorful." I ignored his request. Why should I have to do that? I strongly felt that he should handle it himself. Jordan, possibly because his parents were nearby, acted like a child who hasn't fully grown up. It was unreasonable that he prioritized caring for Lucy over our daughter, Charlotte. When he came home, he paid no attention to Charlotte's homework and was only busy with Lucy. When we went shopping, he would only pick out the brands he wanted or toys for Lucy. While my in-laws still saw Jordan as a child, his childish behavior was gradually diminishing my love for him. What I found most distressing was when my father-in-law interfered with Charlotte's actions. Charlotte, a grade schooler who had started showing interest in makeup, had been buying child-friendly cosmetics. On holidays, she would enjoy applying makeup and doing her nails by herself. Seeing this, my father-in-law would joke, "Is she trying to become a stripper by flaunting her looks at that age?" While he only gave me brief instructions, his constant complaints and sarcasm were particularly infuriating. However, Charlotte retorted, "Grandpa is old-fashioned," which silenced him, and that made me feel relieved. The most uncomfortable moment was when the topic of having a second child came up. "You should consider your age and think about having a second child soon. Shall I give you some advice?" he said, which I found very unpleasant. I am already in my mid-30s and Jordan is approaching 40. We did want a second child, but it was merely a matter of timing. We were satisfied with just Charlotte and did not intend to pursue having another child through fertility treatments. This was a decision for us as a couple and is not something for others to intervene, and the way it was said was extremely displeasing. I had been enduring patiently until my mother-in-law passed away. She herself had apologized several times, saying, "I'm sorry for the trouble caused by my husband and son." She had never opposed her husband in the past and had been unable to speak up. She asked me to be more tolerant of Jordan's behavior since he was spending less time with her. Jordan's behavior was said to be confined to his time at his parents' home, so I couldn't argue against it. Moreover, concerning the matter of having children, my mother-in-law confided in me with a smile. "I've decided I don't want another child with him." Despite the pressure from my father-in-law and Jordan, my bond with my mother-in-law deepened. While I yearned to leave the house, the approaching farewell to my mother-in-law pained my heart. As the first year of living together was about to conclude, my mother-in-law's condition worsened, and she was hospitalized. I continued visiting the hospital, preparing for the inevitable farewell. A month later, she passed away quietly in the hospital, surrounded by family. After the funeral, as we returned to our daily routines, sadness lingered. Although I had planned to leave the house immediately after her death, I continued living there to avoid changing Charlotte's school mid-year. Even a month after my mother-in-law's death, my father-in-law persisted in his authoritarian behavior, and Jordan's attitude had further deteriorated. Even then, he showed no signs of preparing to move out. Instead, He argued that we should stay here forever, claiming it would be pitiful to leave his father alone. I was hoping to move when Charlotte reached 3rd grade, but no effort was being made to find a new home. Furthermore, Jordan began to make unilateral statements about the commute being too long and possibly changing jobs. For me, my father-in-law's circumstances weren't crucial, and with my mother-in-law gone, there was no reason for us to stay in this house. This issue further escalated tensions between us. One night, after Charlotte had gone to bed, my father-in-law and Jordan were drinking and looking through keepsakes. They were quite drunk, reminiscing about my mother-in-law when suddenly a will was discovered. The will mentioned that there was hardly any estate to leave behind, stating it would be sufficient to sell the keepsakes. Most of the content was words of gratitude towards me. Though they did not show me the will, my father-in-law began to complain about its contents. It's meaningless when someone who couldn't even save money passes away. I was hoping to enjoy the inheritance, he grumbled. She should have included more words of gratitude towards me. My father-in-law said loudly, his voice amplified by the alcohol. Hearing Jordan express his disappointment with, "If there's no money, then there's no point in living together," I was shocked. Was the reason for living together just to target your mother's estate? I asked in a chilly voice, astonished that the discussions about money were not out of concern for his mother as I had thought. Yes, the only benefit of living together was the financial aspect. We lived here without paying rent, being able to freely spend money. We intended to continue this lifestyle. My father-in-law said with a laugh. Unable to contain my anger, I felt my grip tighten. But as the will states, my father-in-law pointed to the will. The will mentioned, despite being busy, you took care of me. Busy? You've just been sitting at home doing nothing. A NEET who doesn't pay anything is just a burden in terms of food costs. Get out of this house, he criticized. I had been working from home for a long time, and I had explained this to my father-in-law repeatedly, but he never understood. Let me say this again, I have been working, and I've been preparing all the meals. Do you really think such accusations are valid? I retorted calmly. While trying to keep my emotions in check, I calmly made my counter-arguments. Provoked by my father-in-law, Jordan also began to hurl accusations at me. Housework isn't that hard, right? You're home all the time. It must be easy for you. We're out there working hard every day. You're just freeloading at my parents' house, he said. Despite his drunken state, Jordan's words were rude beyond comprehension. He deemed the household chores insignificant, yet since moving back home, he hadn't lifted a finger. Without responding, I just retreated to my room. They continued laughing, showing their contempt for me. I resolved to show them exactly what their future would look like without me. The next morning, while the two were still asleep, I took Charlotte and left the house. That night, Jordan called. I could guess what he had seen, but it took him quite a while to notice. "What is this?" he sounded flustered. Unable to contain it any longer, I almost burst out laughing at his words. "What do you mean? Are you calling because you can't understand the bank book? If so, you should ask your father directly," I replied coldly. Before she went to the hospital, my mother-in-law had given me the bank books, entrusted me with managing the household finances, and left behind information on debts that my father-in-law and Jordan had, along with a divorce application. Unbeknownst to many, she had been gradually depleting her savings to cover living expenses, as my father-in-law had accumulated a significant amount of debt, causing us to spend over $5,000 a month on living costs. By the time of her passing, There was hardly any estate left because the savings had already run out. Not wanting to cause any unnecessary worry, I took over the cost of living expenses without informing them. "Why do you have so much money?" I didn't answer his question but continued. "By the way, Jordan, you also had debts." Among the documents my mother-in-law had given me was a promissory note with Jordan's name on it. Although I was surprised, I had somewhat expected this. My mother-in-law had said, "Thank you for enduring patiently for so long. After I'm gone, I want you to live freely, released from the binds of your husband and Jordan. I trusted you, Jordan. I wish you had been honest with me about the debts," I said emotionally. "I'm sorry," he apologized lightly. His casual apology seemed to presume forgiveness, and I pressed him further. "Is there nothing else you need to say?" I was looking for something more than just an apology. After a moment of silence, he finally began to speak. "I've been unfaithful. I'm sorry." Jordan suddenly confessed. He admitted to having inappropriate relationships with multiple people, including a junior at work and business partners. The costs of maintaining multiple relationships had led to his debt, he explained. "Thank you for speaking the truth more easily than expected. Now I have all the evidence I need," I said, and Jordan was left speechless. Having suspected Jordan's infidelity but lacking concrete evidence, I had set a trap to test him by secretly recording his statements as proof. "You thought I didn't know about the affairs? The divorce is already a foregone conclusion, so please prepare the paperwork quickly. I'll be taking a fair share of the assets," I declared firmly. Jordan was panicking on the phone, but I calmly ended the call. Afterward, through a lawyer, I ensured I received a fair share of the property division, and the divorce was officially finalized. Jordan ended up accumulating even more debt due to the payments required for the property settlement. I obtained sole custody of our daughter, Charlotte, and completely severed ties with Jordan, choosing not to receive child support from him. Thanks to Jordan confessing details about his infidelity, I even received apologies from his affair partners. A severe conflict erupted between Jordan and his father over financial issues, eventually leading to Jordan being disowned and ousted from the family home. This conflict between the two escalated significantly, to the point where local residents had to call the police due to the disturbance. This series of events facilitated the smooth progression of our divorce proceedings, providing me with some relief. Financially distressed, my father-in-law found it difficult to make ends meet on his pension alone and was forced to look for work to manage his debt repayments. Having always depended on my mother-in-law, he struggled with basic household tasks, realizing just how significant her presence had been. Jordan's own issues were severe. His affair became known at his workplace, resulting in him losing his job. His consideration of changing jobs was likely influenced by this scandal. Previously enjoying a relatively affluent lifestyle at home, Jordan had escalated his affair behaviors, fueled by his preference for expensive brands. Furthermore, one of Jordan's affair partners got engaged to a wealthy man right after breaking up with him. However, once her fiancé learned about her past with Jordan, he called off the engagement and demanded a division of assets, drastically altering her life due to her association with Jordan. Currently, Jordan is unemployed, saddled with significant debt, yet still caring for his beloved cat, Lucy, day by day. His life has temporarily lost its stability, facing many challenges. Treating pets with care is undoubtedly important, but when a cat is considered a priority over me, I begin to question my own worth and find myself caught in complex emotions. Continuing life with my husband might have led to a completely different future, But that choice was not feasible for me. So, with the property division from our divorce as my starting capital, I decided to establish my independence as a designer. After leaving the company I previously worked for, I started a new career at a design studio run by Nikki, the founder. I communicated this significant change to Jordan, but he seemed not to take my words seriously. Since starting work at Nikki's studio, my skills have been recognized and new job offers have been coming in steadily. This has significantly increased my salary, allowing me to lead an independent life. I am working to further increase my income and aim for an even more stable financial life. If my daughter Charlotte wishes to see Jordan, I am prepared to facilitate that, but currently she is engrossed in fashion and seems to pay little attention to her father's presence. Charlotte lives her life in her own style, unconcerned about others' opinions, and her attitude gives me a lot of courage. As my mother-in-law once told me, I have truly gained my freedom. The past failures with Jordan are now just a laughing matter, which I have overcome with Nikki's support. I intend to continue loving design and living happily with my precious daughter Charlotte.